Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be showing from round 10 of this year's FIDE Candidates Tournament. The game is, in essence, the story of poor time management. And if you're wondering about the title of the video, as it is a fairly weird one, first link in the description below is an interview by Mike Klein for chess.com with Alireza's father, Hamid. So do watch it and you will get a better understanding of the title I chose for this video. But getting back to the matchup, Fabi, the only 2800 player of the FIDE Candidates Tournament, a player who already won the FIDE Candidates Tournament, who challenged the Magnus title for the title in London in 2018, and held the Magnus to a draw over the course of 12 classical games, only to succumb in rapid time format, faces Alireza Firouzja, who is not having the greatest event, but he of course can play an incredible game if he chooses so and if it is his day. So let's check it out and let's see what happened here. In their head-to-head score, Fabi is a lot better. Fabi defeated Alireza 6 times in classical chess already. And Alireza defeated Fabi only once in Norway Chess of 2020. Also, they have some 7 games there that ended in a draw. Their first game in the FIDE Candidates Tournament this is already the second half of the FIDE Candidates Tournament, ended with a draw in some 38 moves. Where Fabi went for the Sicilian defense after Alireza's pawn to e4. So here Fabi throws back the first move, pawn to e4, and Alireza replies again with the Sicilian defense, only now with colors reversed. So let's see what happens here. Knight f3, pawn to d6, we have d4, c captures, knight to f6, we have knight to c3, and pawn to a6, the Najdorf Sicilian. And I always say that if you play the Najdorf Sicilian, you have to be ready for absolutely every move that white can throw at you, because there are so many incredible lines here. You can play bishop to g5, you can play bishop to e3, you can play bishop to e2, bishop to c4. These are the top 4 moves, but then you have the Zagreb variation, then you have the Adams attack with pawn to h3, you can play pawn to f4, you could play pretty much anything. Pawn to a4 is the move. You could play bishop to d3, but here rook to g1 by Fabi. It is the 11th most popular continuation, and again, it is a very strong move, and it has been played by some very strong players. Abdusattorov played it, Duda played it, Ivanchuk played it, even Magnus Carlsen played it. So here, there is of course theory behind the move, and e5 is the most common reply to this. But Alireza just fights against white's main idea, that is pawn to g4. Rook to g1 prepares that, as black has sufficient control over the g4 square. So of course white wants to get g4 right away, and h5 stops that. Similar to the Adams attack, where you play h3 and you immediately want to go g4, or you play f3. So h5 stops that, obviously. And it is the move that Anish Giri used to hold both Abdusattorov and the Magnus Carlsen to a draw. And okay, we have bishop to c4, just nicely developing, and it is now as of move 7 that we already have a completely new game. Some other moves were tried here, like h3, bishop to e3, bishop to g5, but bishop to c4 is the first new move of the game. And Alireza already spent 15 minutes with this h5 move. As you can see, there are clocks on the board now. So he obviously does not have this prepared, and rook to g1 was not something that he was expecting. So okay, pawn to g6, we have bishop to g5, bishop to g7, preparing to castle, queen to d2, preparing to castle queenside, and queen to a5, putting pressure on that bishop on g5. And Fabi's first real thing of the game is kingside castles. He spent some 13 minutes on the move. Knight to c6 by Alireza, offering a trade of knights, and knight b3 attacking Alireza's queen, where you could bring the queen back, although it's not that great. Then f4, and f4 and white's position is really great. He goes for queen captures on g5, just sacrifices the queen, but not really, as he will win it back on the next move. So okay, queen captures on g5 and bishop to h6. Alireza gets the queens off the board and says, all right, let's get into it. So pawn to h4. And now you could play something like, let's say, b5, you kick away the bishop, play rook b8, pawn to b4, or you play bishop to e6, the move Alireza played. Now, bishop to e6 our good friend the engine does not like this idea at all. Point being that, well, Fabi did not do the engine thing. Fabi went back for bishop to e2, but probably he decided that it wasn't great. The reason that engine really loves bishop captures on e6 is that after f captures, there's this pawn to e5 move. And now you cannot capture with the knight, because if you capture with the knight, f4 comes, and now the bishop is no longer skewering the white queen. The white queen can now move, so you have to capture the white queen. And then after h captures, both of the knights are hanging, and you're just gonna be up a piece. Let's say knight c4, you're gonna capture here. White is up a full piece. So the problem is, after e5, you don't have knight captures, you're gonna have to play d captures. And now, okay, you have tripled pawns here. And whatever plays, let's say queen captures on h6, rook captures, and knight to c5. Putting pressure on the e6 pawn and the b7 pawn. You can defend with knight to d8, but okay, now the knight is stuck here guarding both of the pawns. If you want to keep being up material, and you really should, because you have tripled pawns, so you know you should at least be up material. Rook g to e1, and white's position is just amazing here. In hands of a 2800 player, I believe this would be winning. So for some reason, Fabi disliked bishop captures on e6. He goes back, bishop to e2, and now king to f8 by Alireza, just improving the position. We have knight to d4, knight captures, rook captures, and now rook to c8. We have bishop to c, pawn to f4 first, now forcing the capturing of the queen. Bishop captures, h captures, and now knight to g4 with some nasty ideas of maybe knight f2 or knight to e3. So rook to f1, also with possibility of pawn to f5, and bishop to d7 by Alireza. We have king to d2, Fabi stops knight to e3, and also gets the king off of the nasty c file. Bishop to c6 now puts pressure on e4, and knight to d5. Asking, are you maybe interested in a nice juicy knight here? But if you capture, then white's position is just, again, really, really strong. Point being that once you play king g7, you want to get the rook into the game. a4, already you stop b5, and after rook to c7, you prepare to double up. Already a5 is on the board, and once you finally double up, pawn to c4, everything is nicely defended, and the white's position is just amazing. So even though that's a great knight, you still don't wanna trade. So pawn to f5 by Alireza, and it is a fine move. Fabi has to decide whether to play captures on f5, g captures on f6 en passant, or just leave the pawn where it is and then wait for something like pawn to e5. Now, I'm going to show you what happens if e captures on f5, because it is very interesting. Point is that, let's say g captures, and now bishop to d3. Seems like you're going to lose that pawn, but there would be this beautiful pawn to e5 move. And then after f captures, d captures, bishop captures on f5, attacking the rook on c8. There's e captures on d4, bishop captures on c8, and now this comes with check, of course. King to g7, bishop captures on g4, now bishop captures on d5, bishop to f3, and we could even trade here. Bishop captures, and now the problem is, if you capture with the rook, then the g5 pawn becomes weak, and if you capture with the pawn to improve your pawns, then you created a pass pawn for black, and now h4, and the passed h pawn will force the rook to go to h1, and the king will be able to stop both of the pawns here, so it would be a draw. So it's one of the possibilities. But g captures on f6 was played by Fabi, capturing en passant, and now knight captures on f6 and pawn to c4, just cementing the knight here. We have king to g7. King to f7 also can be played, just keeping an eye on everything, also keeping an eye on the e7 pawn, or bishop captures on d5 is now okay to play, but king to g7 was played by Alireza. He offers the e7 pawn and says, I'm ready to calculate. Are you, Fabi, sir, also ready to calculate? And Fabi says, yes, I am. He plays knight captures on e7, and puts pressure on Alireza's rook on c8, but Alireza goes knight captures on e4 with check, king to d1, and now knight to g3, putting pressure on Alireza, on Fabi's bishop and rook as well. So rook to e1, and now knight back to f5, attacking the rook on d4. And you could consider some moves, like knight captures on c6 is definitely a move, but knight captures on f5 is the most proper way to play. So knight captures, g captures, and bishop to d3. Now putting pressure on the f5 pawn and saying, okay, are you interested in a pawn trade? But should Alireza go for a pawn trade, then Fabi would just trap his bishop with rook to g1, and Alireza would lose the game here. So after bishop to d3, we have rook c to f8. Better than rook h to f8, as the h pawn will also need protection, so rook defends the pawn here, and just rook captures on d6. And the problem is, for Alireza, Fabi is now up a pawn. It's not a lot, but bishops are of the same color, so if the rooks come off the board, we know that those endgames are most often winning. So rook to f6, offering a trade of rooks. Fabi just plays pawn to c5. Remember, it's okay to trade a pair of rooks, but not both pairs of rooks. We have pawn to h4. Capturing would be best right away, but with pawn to h4, Alireza invites Fabi to go for rook to e7 check, which Fabi does. We have rook to e7 with check, king to g6, and now rook to e5, going after the f5 pawn. And the problem is, if Alireza trades now, then after c captures, the f5 pawn is hanging, and let's say bishop to d7, king comes to e2, and there's really no good move for Alireza. If you play rook to e8, of course Fabi just trades, and the same color bishop endgame is either winning or very close to winning. In Fabi's hands, probably winning. So rook to d8 would have to be played. Then let's say b3, you're going to play bishop to c8, going after the pawn, but now even rook d5, and you have constant pressure on the f5 pawn. The d6 pawn is defended on a dark square. This is very strong for white. So after rook e5, Alireza played pawn to h5, just adding another defender to the f5 pawn. But now Fabi has an incredibly strong move that's winning for him, but it's not an easy one to spot. Plus, both of them are very low on time. Fabi 3 minutes on the clock, Alireza almost 3 minutes on the clock, and it's only move 32. They still need to make 8 more moves to reach time control. Feel free to pause the video here and try to find the move that Fabi missed in the game while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this wonderful idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to d8. That is the move that wins. The reason Fabi played bishop to f1 is just to defend his pawn, as he was down on clock, and then he said, all right, I'm either going to win this or I'm not going to win this. But after rook to d8, there's really no move that black can make. Bishop captures is no longer an option due to rook to g8 check, and you just blunder the bishop. So what you can do after rook to d8 is really not a lot. Let's say you play king to g7, already bishop to c4 comes. And again, capturing the g2 pawn is not an option. And after, let's say, rook to f8, you'll play rook to e7 with check. And after, let's say, king f6, now you play rook to e6 with check, king to g7, and now rook d to d6. And again, you don't allow bishop captures due to rook to g6 check. And without the possibility of the pawn being captured, the position is now just overwhelming. Let's say rook h to f8, rook f to h8, or something, doesn't really matter. It's a fairly quick win. Rook to g6 check, king to f8, rook g to f6 with check, king to g7, and now just a nice checkmate. Rook f7, king to g8, and rook to g6 will be checkmate. So some of the lines end abruptly like this, some of them just by winning material, but all of the lines are winning for Fabi. But he went bishop back to f1, and now Alireza just takes off a pair of rooks off the board. Rook captures, c captures, and he goes back. Rook to h8 to defend against the passed d pawn. Rook to e6 with check, king to f7, and now bishop to c4, threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. And while it is possible to just sidestep this with king to g7, Alireza boldly goes rook to d8, saying, okay, you have no good discoveries here, because if you go, let's say, go for something like rook to h5 with check, king g7, and you take the pawn, rook captures on d6 comes with check, and Alireza would be very happy with this. But Fabi, of course, not interested. He plays king to e1. Just keeps the tension. Alireza now has to move the king, king to g7, or you capture, of course, the pawn. But then again, rook to e2 with a discovery, and you blunder your bishop, so that the g2 pawn is poisoned for the entire game. So after king e1, king to g7, king to f2, and now pawn to a5. We have pawn to a3 and pawn to b5, going after the bishop. Bishop to d3, now attacking the f5 pawn, and bishop to d5, challenging the rook. Rook to e7 check, we have bishop to f7. The problem is now not a lot of moves can be played. And here I forgot to mention that Here you can see there's very little time on the clock. 46 seconds for Fabi and 6 seconds for Alireza. This was Fabi's 40th move, and Alireza had to make one more move. He decided to go for bishop to f7, which is fine. And none of the other moves were really better. Sorry, bishop to d5. None of the other moves were really better. So now rook to e7 check, bishop to f7. If you don't go for this, let's say you play king to f8. The problem is now bishop captures on b5 and you're just up too much material. If rook captures on d6, not a problem. Rook to d7, you force a rook trade, and of course the pawn and bishop endgame is just winning. Like rook captures, you're going to play bishop captures, and let's say bishop to e4, you defend here, but the problem is the h4 pawn is on a dark square. You're just going to move the king all the way back and take that pawn. Of course, first you will prepare it. Let's say you play b4, you create a passed pawn, king e7, bishop to a4, you're going to play king to d6, now bishop to d1, and now bishop will control this diagonal, and that's pretty much it. If you go here, then we just trade bishops. That's great for white. And if you play something like bishop d5, again bishop f3, let's say bishop to e6, and now all of the squares have been taken away from the black king. You will not be able to reach that pawn, and now just a couple of moves with the king takes off the pawn on a dark square off the board. Fabi will be up 2 pawns and of course completely winning. So Alireza went bishop back to f7, and now bishop captures on b5, preparing bishop to c4, of course, to end the game right away. So king f6 and rook to c7. Again, you know that if you trade rooks, then the position is winning, and even though Fabi has to give up his d6 pawn, it will come with the cost of rooks coming off the board. But if you don't take it, then you're just down too much material. So rook captures, rook to c6 by Fabi, rook captures, and bishop captures on c6. We have bishop to b3, but now just bishop to d7, king to g6, and here king to g1. And he was in this position on move 47 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. We even have a nice photo of this moment there. You can see a really tough situation for Alireza. Looking at the board, Fabi seemingly cleaning his glasses, no longer interested in the game because he's winning however you play it. And at the exact same moment, pretty much, Alireza extends his hand, gives a handshake, and says, "All right, you were better, the better player this game, sir." So yeah, tough break for Alireza, not having the greatest tournament, but Fabi again back in the race for first place. He of course wants to win this tournament, and yeah, here you resign because again the problem is the pawn on the dark square. Let's say you play bishop to c2, you want to defend the pawn on f5. So you can move the king to defend this pawn, and maybe the bishop defends this pawn, but it just doesn't work because the king has to defend the pawn on a light square, and you have a light square bishop. So to give you an example, let's say king h2, and now you're going to even play pawn a4. Okay, your one pawn controls the 2 pawns on the queen side, looks great, but still after king h3, king to h5, it's a matter of a simple bishop e8 check. Now you have to move the king, the pawn comes off the board. Next to this pawn will come off the board, let's say king g7, king to g5, you will go even after the bishop, but doesn't matter, bishop to d7, and after king f7 you take another pawn, and that's pretty much it. You can win it any way you want, but this is the simplest way to do it. So yeah, very nicely done by Fabiano, showing again why he is a 2800 player, surprising Alireza with this rook to g1 move. But that's why I always say, when you play the Najdorf, you have to be ready for absolutely everything white can throw at you, because white will throw everything at you at some point. And yeah, here are the standings after 10 rounds have been played. For those of you who don't want the other games spoiled, stop watching now, as I will show it in approximately 3 seconds. You know, just to give you time to decide whether you want to be spoiled or not. But yeah, here are the standings. Sorry, that's a really weird positioning of the standings. Yeah, there we go. So these are the standings. Jan and Gukesh still in the lead as they drew their game. It was a pretty tough fight, but 0 advantage for either player throughout the entire game. It was just very solid, and both of them have shown why they are leading the tournament. Gukesh really held nicely with the black pieces in there. Then we have a three-way tie for second: Fabiano, Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, and Pragnananda. So really, either of these 5 players can still win the candidates tournament. For Vidit on 5 points, it's not going to be easy, but it is definitely still possible. Alireza on 3.5 is not winning tournaments, and Nijat Abbasov still waiting to win that first game. But yeah, 10 rounds have been played. Nijat still without a win, Yanni Pomnishi still without a loss, and next game we are probably going to show Nijat versus Hikaru Nakamura. As you can see, Hikaru also on 5.5 has defeated Nijat in a really well played game. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope that you're enjoying the coverage of the candidates tournament so far. It's been an amazing event, and I've seen some of the people are saying, okay, why don't they have increment up until move 40? That's just weird. They are spoiling games. Well, that's kind of the fun of it, and the players have voted for this time control themselves, because I guess everyone thinks for themselves that they will be the better player with little time on the clock. But when the clock starts ticking, you see that it's not easy to find moves, as here Alireza was forced to make some 8 moves with little time on the clock, as was Fabi, but yeah, Fabi was the better player here. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Jeffrey Cook, Jacob Gonzalez, Ashish Shiole, Mark Jensen, and Stanislav Kuperstein for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, checking, and of course, continuing to cover the FIDE Candidates Tournament. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.